Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to the Brand Architect podcast. I'm really happy that you're over. So we have several people already watching the live stream. Some of you will be watching the replay or listening to the podcast on iTunes and Spotify. So thanks a lot for showing up. Let's bring up our guest. Timothy Peterson is over. Welcome, Timothy.
Well, thank you so much.
Again, another person whom I met on LinkedIn. I know that by now everyone knows that this is where I'm getting my guests from most of the time. So we got connected a while ago, and I'm really happy to have you over. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for accommodating my time since I'm in New York and you are not.
And I am not, yeah, true. But, remote work, future of work, pandemic, all that kind of changed the concept of time and geography and everything else. So I guess it doesn't really matter anymore where we are.
I guess not.
Yeah. So I feel like we're in a same space in terms that we're both marketing professionals and we both work in the technology sphere. And the way I see ourselves is we're kind of bridging the tech and its users and trying to translate everything into human language and human stories,
Yeah.
which is kind of a challenging task sometimes. So let's follow your journey from the very beginning. I presume the first time you started sort of dealing with technology-related things was when you joined the .com tech startup. Was that the time you?
No,
you
it was actually much earlier than that. I started a tech business pre-internet when I was in college in the 1980s.
Wow.
It's a long time ago, but it was right at the time that Apple came out with its original Mac and the laser printer was invented. And I started a desktop publishing business, just really getting all kinds of great projects out of my dorm room and paying for that very expensive printer with all of the work that I did. So it was a great intro into tech, actually.
Oh wow, interesting. Okay, so that's where you started, and you've been in the tech since then. So it's interesting. Like obviously, the tech really evolves and it moves very fast. If you had to pick just one major shift since the time you started, what would that be?
Well, I think I would have to say the internet, but really when I talk with people about this, I usually say that one of the biggest changes is the pace of change. That people have to understand that things move very quickly. It's not generationally. It's not over a couple years. It's not over whatever time frame. Things are much tighter and quicker now. You really have to always be innovating, and I think that's my biggest tech lesson that I've learned over the years.
Okay, and do you think like marketing is changing at the same pace, or it's falling a little bit behind? And is there any kind of big major changes apart from the technology we use and the data, more data availability at this point?
In some ways, marketing is kind of coming full circle. I think that a lot of the best marketing from decades ago was very personal. Or sales was very personal. A human knew another human, treated them in a very personal way, and that interaction meant something. And to another point where there's that personalization again as a major priority, and the tech is available to help us make it happen.
Okay, yeah. The challenge, though, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like the challenge is personalization using tech in such a way that it doesn't look very artificial. Because sometimes when many people use the same personalization tactics, it still doesn't feel personal. Like, for example, on LinkedIn, when people are approaching you, they all use the similar phrases, right? Like we have common interests, or, let's connect, or I need 15 minutes of your time, or whatever it is. And although it kind of feels personal, but that all they did was just change the first name, right?
But I think that there are levels to this. It's not necessarily about one-to-one personalization. I mean, an example is that, I work for a sports tech startup, but I also advise some startups in health and wellness and fashion and beauty and some other areas. And in those areas, it really is about what the communities are. And this is, of course, something that people who are really into social media understand. It's all about community. You find your core group that has the same passions that you do. And so it could be personalization really at that level, at that like micro community level. That's a major change in marketing really in the last just few years, because before that, you were still doing things like personas, right? Or what have you. You're coming up with these groupings that maybe made sense, but didn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I love that you mentioned communities. I'm like a really big advocate of creating genuine communities around you, because I feel like it's so powerful that, if you had to just get one achievement, just having that would lead to so many other things that, you'd rather pick that one because there are so many things coming after that. But probably that's also one of the most difficult things to do in marketing. Because at least many are struggling to get to a point where they can gather people around them with a genuine relationship.
Well, I think, and I'm so glad you said genuine relationship right at the end of what you were just saying, because that's a core of what I talk about to other people I work with, is that how do you just have to keep asking, how are you building a genuine relationship, or why don't you have a genuine relationship? And this is something that's useful for B2B or B2C companies. It's like, if you don't talk about that internally on a regular basis, you're not really going to have the success that you could, right? You got to figure out what it is that drives people for your product or your service, and build that genuine connection, that relationship that will ultimately drive sales. But of course, it's not all about sales, right? I mean, you've got to have a relationship independent of just like, give me money, right? Because that's
non-transactional relationships. Yeah, I mean, I get that, and it's interesting. It's nice that you mentioned B2B, because I'm sometimes getting counter arguments from many people in the B2B space saying that yes, but communities and relationships and being intimate with your audience is not really so needed in the B2B space, because it's not we don't really need that. We can get away without it. What do you think about that? I mean, do you agree?
They're wrong. I think they're wrong, Annie, when they say that. I have a podcast of my own called The Hard Truth about B2B e-commerce, right? And The Hard Truth, with my co-host, is the CEO of a company called Trellis. We talk about this all the time with our guests. It's really like, how is B2B different or not from B2C? And, community building and having a genuine relationship is important, to B2B. And a lot of the most successful businesses that we've talked to are happy to share those experiences. So you could try, to do it without, but it's why, don't you want to be part of something, right? You want to be, if you're selling LED lighting or pipes or anything, don't you want to be part of a community or communities that really want to buy your product and know more about your product and help you develop more product?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think that, when you get the direct connection and direct relationship, you get the feedback, you get the insights. You just, all you have to do is go to the community and just pay attention, because they are willingly sharing so much information that you will probably not be able to get through marketing research and surveys and focus groups. So it's reflecting the natural kind of environment that they feel so much safer to share their viewpoints. So all you have to be is just be around and observe and pay attention, I guess.
Well, one thing I would add too is you use, again, I love picking up on things that you're saying because we're thinking alike in some ways here right now. When you say safer, right? I mean, I have heard from clients of mine who are B2B say, well, it's just safer to continue doing what we're doing, right? I mean, that's
Mm.
interesting too. And I say, no, 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 it's not. It's not. Don't look at it that way. It's not safer to continue the way it was. It's much safer to look at what people are doing and try to move forward with those people and continue to build new communities. Because, I am not a young person. I mean, just by mentioning to you that I had a desktop publishing business gives that away.
I'm
But,
not either, so no
but
worries.
but I keep going, right? I mean, to me, I want to see what is happening at all times. I want to learn. I want to keep learning. And I think that businesses need to do that. Otherwise, why do you want to be stuck? Unless you have some sort of a museum or something. I don't know. Why do you want to be like in
Oh,
the past?
well, I think it's the same logic of sticking to the comfort zone, where you sort of, it feels safe, it's comfortable. You already know how things operate, and there is no need for growing pains. So you just stick around the way you did all the time, and it's easier, right? It's kind of, and people are lazy by nature, so the temptation is there, obviously.
Yes.
So, and also, especially for, I don't know, I mean, it may be, I mean, I may get accused of ageism, although I'm old as well, but I have a feeling that especially in the further career path, when you already kind of, have been around for quite a long time, you don't want to risk trying new things because, the failure may be more painful, or you may be thinking that you're going to lose more by making a mistake at that stage of your career.
You're right, but I have to say the COVID-19 crisis has made a lot of people question that. People have had restaurants and resisted advertising them online until the crisis came, or resisted having deliveries of their product, or I don't want to get that specific necessarily in everything, but I was talking to somebody who owned a barber shop, and he never knew who his customers were. He had no idea who they were because they showed up and they had their appointments and they left, right? They had their haircuts and they left. Now, during this crisis, he scrambled. He put ads up, a website up, set up an appointment system that was really difficult for him to figure out because he'd never done any of it. He just said he was going to continue in the way he had always continued. So that's the risk, right? That something comes up.
Yeah, and in terms of risk, I'm very opportunistic person. So the opportunity risk is something that is a risk to me as well. Just missing out the opportunities. I'd rather try it out and know for sure that it doesn't work after I've tried it out, than always go back and think, oh, if I had done it, that was the thing that I missed out, right? So, and I think with COVID and at this sort of period we are at, loads of opportunities emerged where when you look around, people who actually jumped on it and people who actually acted without overthinking were the ones who made some amazing things, and who even grew their businesses in the times of crisis. Like I know yoga instructors who started going online and got access to a more global audience. And, they are not limited to geography anymore. They are not paying rent of their studio and things like that. And eventually they started serving more people and making more money as a result of the whole thing. But like those who are not comfortable taking risks and figuring things out and just trying to see how it would work, those just closed the studios and are kind of way behind at the moment. So so the same with marketing. Like things are changing a lot and always the new things are emerging, but it can also be overwhelming because there are too many new things coming at the same time. Like if a marketing professional, or if this podcast is specifically for tech startup founders who may not specifically be marketing professionals, but want to learn enough to at least know how to approach the main things, right? How do you choose, what to pick? How do you monitor what's going on, and how to choose? You can't really try everything.
No, you can't. You're absolutely right. I mean, and let's again, it's about risk, right? If you are a new business, if you're a tech startup, you don't want to be spending all of your time trying out 25 different things. That's not going to be practical for you as a young, relatively small, maybe underfunded, or lightly funded startup. I usually tell people to kind of pick 2 or 3 things and focus in on, and again, this is true for products or services, but you focus in on what are you doing for awareness, right? If you're going to pick one of the 3 things, you've got to make sure people are aware of who you are, right? And then you move over to whatever people call that next phase, but consideration, where there's some knowledge, but you're comparing. You're saying, well, was it this product as good as this one, or what does it do different from this one? Or same for service. And then the third is, that conversion piece, something that's much more detailed for people who've already moved through the other 2 steps. So I usually start people in that conversation and I say, okay, what are we doing for awareness? Then we pick something really sensible. And then what are we doing for consideration for that phase? And then what are we doing for conversion, making sure people are actually going to buy something or sign up for something or what have you. So that's how I boil it down, is try to get it into those 3 buckets. And then we start making other choices, right? Like what makes sense? Is email marketing or paid search, or is it all going to be on Instagram? I mean, there are a lot of choices depending on what type of product or service it is.
I mean, you started from the hardest part for me specifically, when you have to choose only 1 or 2 or even 3, because it's always hard to sort of niche down. And I totally understand the benefits of niching down, right? Because obviously it works way better. It's much easier to make decisions, and it's much easier to make choices once you know, like, that one small niche that you're serving, obviously. And it's always nicer to start and then go broader. But it's always so hard to pick that one, like that niche. So how do you go about it when you have to start from the very beginning and you have to make the fundamental choices? What are the parameters you're looking into?
A couple things. So I'll give maybe 2 examples that are kind of different, just to see if this makes sense. So one of those is like a consumer product being sold B2C, and it's a beauty product. So it's primarily focused on women, but it's a skincare product. So I don't want to name the company because I haven't.
Yeah, of course, it doesn't matter. Yeah, sure.
But it's a skincare product primarily for women, but really men could buy it too. It's primarily for women. So they had other products, but this was the main product that they wanted to really feature as a young business and really get out in the world. So what I did and what I had people work on is just defining, like, okay, if this is it, then what else is there out in the marketplace right now? What are those people responding to? Is it women 25 to 44 who do these things, right? So it's really figuring out, based on what their most likely success was. I think that's a good way to put it. It's like, we're starting here. What is most likely? Like, you got other great stuff, but we got to get to that phase 2 and phase 3, even if that means a few months down the line, right? Yeah. So that's how I focused that whole conversation and got things moving. And just so you have this information, then we can talk about the other business is really the one that I'm in now. It's a sports startup, right? And it's B2B, and it's a service. It's SaaS, it's software as a service. So it's licenses, right? We're selling subscriptions to this service to people who do sports sponsorship decisions, right? Completely different kinds of businesses, completely different. Yet we're doing almost the same sort of approach. We're saying, well, all right, who are really the top 3 sorts of people who are going to buy this product and why. Why are they interested in these subscriptions? What's it solving for them? And then zeroing in, what is it to make them aware we exist, to compare us to anything else that's in the market, and to get them to sign up, right? So it follows the same path, even though one's consumer and a product and the other is B2B and a service.
Okay. A question though. Sponsorships, sports sponsorships, like how much did COVID impacted the whole thing? Because I feel like that whole space has had major shifts, at least for now, right?
It's
the season
really
that was
crazy to live through this. It really is. But a couple things that I think all of our viewers and listeners will understand. One is that, with the pause, people did a couple things. People were sport lovers. A lot of them went to esports. They're gaming and they're online, and so there are many esports sponsorship opportunities. So that's something that is real and ongoing. That's one thing. The second thing is that everything that is connected to in-person live sports, people are reevaluating all those sponsorship deals because it's big money over multiple years. So they need somebody to get into the data and to say, well, here are the options, and should I be sponsoring an athlete versus a team versus a league, and so on, right? So it really becomes, you would think that it would have gotten like dead quiet or something, but it didn't. It's something that made us like evaluate exactly how we're focusing, but there's a lot going on.
So it transformed into a different place, but it's still there, and there is still money put in, and
exactly.
Okay, got it. Yeah, makes sense. What about what are your views on personal brands? Because like we spoke about B2C, we spoke about B2B. There are loads of so-called online solopreneurs who are building their personal brands and then either from the very beginning or later on monetizing that brand name, or monetizing their audience, and putting something out there. Is this process of choosing similar to what you described, or there are some specifics for personal brands?
I think there are specifics for personal brands. It's a little bit different. And one of the reasons I think there are is that, as an individual, you have a couple choices you need to make that are independent of how the market treats you, right? I mean, that's something that's a little different. First of all, do you want to be known as a personality, which is, a certain type of thing, or do you want to be known as an expert in 1, 2, or 3 things, right?
Okay.
Those are very different for online brands, for individuals. So a personal brand,
combined, it's either one or the other, you think?
You can combine them, but in my experience, a lot of people kind of come out as like they are the big speaker on a certain topic, or they have a certain personality and they're invited everywhere. However, they may not have like the depth of expertise of some other people in, let's just say, e-commerce. I'll just pick something, right? So finding an expert in e-commerce who then creates a personal brand around that to show off their expertise is different than somebody who goes in the other route and wants to really be known as a personality first, and then they show off whatever they want to be talking about, or they feel like they can talk about a lot of different topics, right?
Yeah, or some influencers and gurus don't even get to the second stage. They just stay as personality. It's just faking stuff. Yeah.
I mean, because, I've worked with influencers since the very beginning, really, and I'm a big fan of people who are passionate and authentic and all those things, that people talk about that makes them successful. But if you are simply in it for the game, or trying to be just the biggest influencer with and only talking about how big your following is, or all those sorts of things, to me, that's not useful to anybody but you, right? I mean, that's not really valuable, right? I love people who give value out to the world for health or for food or for travel or, all these things. I love it. I absolutely love it. Those people are great influencers and I want to see them succeed. But if you're just like, look at my following.
You're just talking, and I'm just recalling different LinkedIn profiles where in description it says 30,000 connections or followers or whatever it is, like 100K followers and whatever. And to me, like, we can look beyond data, right? We can understand the meaning of certain numbers and the not so important numbers behind it, right? So it all depends on how relevant those 30,000 people are. It all depends on how engaged they are and how, with how many do you actually have relationship, like with how many have you spoken? Because what I'm trying to do, and I know it's not scalable, and probably I don't even want that to be scalable, because then you're losing the intimacy and you're losing the quality of your relationship, because after a certain point, you just can't scale it so well. But, if you have several thousand of followers or connections, periodically, like I just slowed down 20 minutes of my time just to go back and talk to a few of them, just to get the feel and understand who they are. Like, how did on the earth did they find me? Like, did they see, like, which post did they see, and why did they decide to follow or whatever, right? Because and not only for for later on some decision making perspective in terms of what kind of content to produce later on, right? Because what your audience wants. Not even I'm not that strategic person, right? But just out of curiosity, because it's really like I'm genuinely interested just see what type of people are attracted to the content or are attracted to the profile, and what is the reason behind it. Because it's so diverse. You can't really get the right trends in place straight away. So it's interesting just to do that.
I mean, I would never say that I could predict like who's going to become wildly popular and influential or any of those sorts of things. I can't really predict all that. However, if you're thinking about just yourself personally, I have seen so many people be successful in just being themselves, but being experts in something, right? So, that's, I had the pleasure of working with Martha Stewart, who has a certain personality here in the US. And, she obviously predates the internet with the beginnings of her business and all that. But she's also really great on the internet. She knows how to work, her particular expertise on lifestyle and food and, whatever. And people love it, right? I mean, but it's really her. If she were talking about something that had nothing to do with all that stuff, it might not work, but somehow it works, right? So maybe, she's not the freshest example, but I like people like this who have like an expertise, who share it and who have a personality, and you can kind of dive in or not. If they don't have that, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's much harder route to it's an uphill battle if they don't have that kind of creating the thing. And these days I kind of feel that even for tech startups, the personality and the personal brand of the founder is very important. Because first of all, there aren't many personal brands behind tech startup founders, because most of them are tech-centric and kind of very focused on building whatever they are building and on the business side of it. And most of them prefer not to be, so public themselves. So they'd rather just hire a person who would do the thing instead. But I feel like that is something that shouldn't really be outsourced. I really feel like the founder's personality is, I personally very often choose similar brands by whose founder do I want to support more. If they have similar services and like it's not a huge difference in user experience for me, I'd rather support someone that I've seen and I liked and I would like to support personally, because I've seen the personality behind it, right? I've seen the person behind it. I don't know. Maybe it's not the way, maybe it's not really the right way to go, but I feel like many people start feeling that way these days. So what do you think about that?
I do think you're right, but I think there's also one other piece to this. Having, and this sounds kind of weird, but I'll just say it, to have a personality as a brand, as a tech company, you don't need it to have it about one person. You can have a personality, about what the company stands for, what they're really about. Like, think of Tom's shoes or Bombas socks, or, again, outside of tech, but they have personalities because of what they do, and you could do that in tech too. I've known some really amazing people, but they set up like their family, their approach in that startup, and everybody is of the same mindset. They're really thinking about the same things, and that's very special. And you want to try to do that. You don't want to be alone, in your idea. You want people to be around you with the same idea.
Oh yeah, and I think that's important point, because when brands don't stand for something and they don't really share their values or kind of illustrate their values, it's very hard to resonate, because you're eventually comparing your values to the brand's values, and kind of either feel related or you don't. So I think that's why Facebook has such controversial reactions around the brand, and even Mark himself as a personal brand have all these issues, because many people feel like their personal ethical compass is not really in line with theirs, right? And I mean, nevertheless, we keep using Facebook, right? So like ultimately it doesn't really bring such a big problem for the company, because we all feel,
Yeah, it's a funny thing though, because I had a conversation with some folks in tech about Facebook recently because of the boycotts and these other things that are going on, and we were talking about how, and again, you might know this, and a lot of viewers might or might not, but LinkedIn is older than Facebook, right? So I've been on LinkedIn for 16 years. Right. This is something that's weird, but it's true. I've been on for 16 years.
But you probably just had your profile up and that was it, right?
No, actually, I've used it in many different ways, many different times. I've gotten jobs through it. I've used it to get leads, in a way that some people do.
Okay.
Now, it's just my, it's for fun more than a lot of other things. I really enjoy it. But it's 16 years. But the point, though, is that it predates Facebook. It predates Twitter. What predated Facebook in its space? MySpace. What predated MySpace? Friendster. There is room for someone to come in with something that people feel better about, and all of a sudden millions of people will download that app and move. So I don't feel like you must stay with Facebook. I don't feel like anybody must do anything. If you have a compelling alternative, then people will go there. Look what's happening with TikTok, with the potential bans and all this kind of stuff. There are so many downloads of anything that's an alternative to TikTok. It's astounding, by the millions. So people will move.
Oh yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess it's the biggest challenge for these kind of networks is getting the first initial traction. And then if you're good enough and big enough crowd have tried you out, then the word of mouth will kind of, do the marketing for you and bring people in. Because you're always more inclined to try something out, a product or service, if your friend said that they used it and they loved it. At least you will check it out, right? For sure. So and then on the other hand, like sometimes I feel like, oh no, I don't need yet another app or yet another platform. I'm already almost everywhere. But then, at least from the curiosity perspective, you just want to check it out. And then, it was the same with LinkedIn. It's been around for so long. I've been on it for a while, but I never used it. For me, it was, and I had this kind of feeling against LinkedIn because when I left corporate, I was extremely anti-corporate. I mean, I'm not so much now, but for me, like everything, like all these business suits, all this kind of corporate setup, and everything else was something that I was trying to avoid at all costs. And LinkedIn was, for me, like had this image of just the illustration of a corporate network. And which it's not anymore, but you still get these comments saying, oh, but this is not Facebook. Like, how are you using this network? It's not Facebook. But I feel like it became more vibrant because probably people started using it as Facebook, because people started creating content on LinkedIn, because it became more sort of, it's not static anymore. Our profiles are mini blogs, our profiles are kind of mini live streams and whatever it is becoming. So it starts populating with living and moving components, probably. I don't know. How do you feel about that? I mean, you've been around for much longer here on this platform. How do you feel about LinkedIn?
I feel like it's gone through many phases at this point, and most of it makes sense. I in some ways I'm surprised it hasn't evolved even more. Because the basic structure of it all has changed so little over the years. So it's added in more features and more functions, but it really hasn't dramatically changed, except, as you pointed out, by the folks who have joined more recently and the type of content that they're posting. And I don't usually get into the argument about it shouldn't be Facebook. To me, that's, if people want to use it, they use it. And if it doesn't work for them, then they're not going to do that again. They're going to do something else. So for me, I think it is good professionally for me. I think it's good personally for me. And if I want to get business through Facebook, I do. And if I want to use it for, just personal reasons to stay in touch with people or to connect with new great people like yourself, then I do. Right. I mean, that's where the position I am in my career. So I'm not.
So you have the choice. Yeah.
Like right out of college saying I've got to use it in a certain way. I'm just, at that phase right now where it's like I have a choice. I can just decide how to use it at any given time.
Okay. You mentioned if I want to get a business from LinkedIn, I can. Mm-hmm. And we all know many gurus who haven't been on LinkedIn for so long, who are actually teaching exactly that, how to get leads and how to get business from LinkedIn. And obviously, we both know that startups usually have smaller budgets. Startups can't really kind of do most of the things that are really kind of paid marketing related stuff, and they are more inclined into trying to growth hack and have more organic efforts. So for a startup founder, or who is using this platform, are there any sort of free ways to build something that would bring in business and customers and awareness of the new brand?
Yeah, there are. I mean, I think that, and again, I do not like terms like guru, anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either.
I do not.
I always use them with the.
It's kind of funny, but the way that I view this, and the people I personally know who've done well, they have their core message down. They really understand their core message. Like, here's another person, and he's in a food category, like a healthy food category. But if you know Mark Samuel on LinkedIn, I love mentioning him. He started a company called I1 WON Organics, and it could have just gotten lost, doing great product, but there are millions of companies that do stuff like this. But he has such a compelling personality, really a literal personality online. He writes about what business is like day to day, how tough it is personally, how, what real successes are like. It's very genuine, and people follow him and they get participated. And when he puts a call out, he'll put a call out and say, how do I get into, I'll make it up, Target, right? Or something. He'll name something. And people will respond and say, well, here's the person I know, and here's how it's done. And I'm going to DM you their phone number, and please use my name. So he has that kind of a reputation now. That is something that people in a lot of different categories for a lot of different kinds of tech businesses and non-tech businesses build up. And those are the ones I see who are most successful. It's not like, how do I get leads and how do I do things in 90 days? It's more that organic.
Yeah. It's like I had that when I was, I was writing and publishing my books, I'll teach you how to write a book in 10 days. And I'm like, okay, yeah, fine. True.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, well, you mentioned something that is actually, it always works, but it's one of the scariest thing in the world. You mentioned about, I mean, by saying that he shared, he was very transparent, right?
Mm-hmm.
By being transparent and by being open and by showing vulnerability, it always works, but it's very scary. Many
Mm-hmm.
people are kind of, it's people say that live streaming is scary, but I think that is scarier than a live stream. It's
Mm-hmm.
completely different level of opening up to a crowd of people you don't know, without predicting the reactions, and sort of bringing them into your life, right? Which is again, like, many people feel different comfort limits to how much they can open up, but I have felt like those who have stretched their limits get exactly that, because that probably it's the fastest way to create relationships, right? They start trusting you because you open up.
It is, and what I would say to all of the viewers and listeners is that it's not like you have to share personal trauma. You do not have to share things that are really private. I think the point is that you need to be sharing things that are real and genuine, even if it's just about the business. Like, talking about how you're putting in so much time that it is tough to balance work and life. That's something a lot of people can relate to, and they understand it immediately. Like, they can latch onto it and understand immediately. You don't have to talk about like a health issue or something else that you don't want to share. So some people just put it all out there, and it's there for everyone to talk about openly and to learn from and to learn together. Others, they'll hold other things back and they want to just focus on the business. But I think the real success is from just opening up and sharing. Other folks, that I work with, in different types of, businesses. Like I mentioned Trellis, it's an e-commerce agency. The CEO is this guy, Isaiah Bollinger. He talks about what it's like to get clients, what it's like when things get rocky with a big client, what it's, things that are real, right? I mean, everyone can understand these things, and it's not like anyone's dissing a client, right? I mean, think of it that way too. You're just saying this is real. These things happen, and let's all talk about it together as a community. People respect that, and they want to be around you if you're talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I kind of probably the right way to look at this is basically just getting, first of all, I mean, I always say there is no magic button. There is no kind of, magic recipe that you just take and copy from the people who have made it. Because I feel like, first of all, you can never be them. So the personality mixture and personal side of things is something you can't copy, because you can't be someone else. The second is, very often there are so many different reasons that they succeeded, right? Maybe even if you copy the same strategy, maybe the strategy doesn't work anymore because many people are doing it already and he was the first one to figure it out. And, or maybe it's, I mean, there are so many different variations. You can't really go and look at a person who in whose shoes you want to be, and you go and copy everything and hope that you're going to get the same results. 10 people will do exactly the same thing. 10 people will get different results. And I feel like that personality factor is very important, because people, I mean, it's just in real life. We pick our friends, right? We don't like absolutely everyone. And very often we are very irrational in terms of who we chose when we are asked about explanations or reasons. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling. Sometimes it's just you like the vibe. Sometimes it's common interest or whatever it is, right? Yeah. You may understand like that the other person on LinkedIn. I mean, I have seen many profiles on LinkedIn who produce valuable. We keep talking about you have to provide value, right? But value in people's mind for different people is different thing, right? So if we look at value saying you provide valuable content in terms that it's useful, it provides some knowledge, it provides tips or whatever it is, right? Again, I know many people who are doing that and who have amazingly valuable content from that respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't like their vibe. I don't like them as persons, right? So I do know that if I follow them and if I read that stuff, it's gonna be useful. And I know that probably it will be easier just to follow them and make notes and get more tips in a week than following many different people and getting the same thing in 4 weeks. But I just won't follow them because it's just, I don't want the negative experience. I don't want to get annoyed while I'm getting that value, right? So the price of annoyance versus value is something that I don't want to trade off, right? I'd rather just, I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about that? Because I know it's not programmatic, right?
No. I mean, you brought up a couple really, really great points. I mean, one is that, first I just want to address what you said about there's no, one formula. You're right about 10 people doing 10 things and their circumstances are all going to be different. So, you can't say that I've got the rule book and I'm going to follow it and that's it, because that's not the way these things work. But the second thing you said too about annoyance and all of that, there are folks that I just can't follow and I don't want to read their posts and I don't want to see their videos. And, it's not even their point of view. Sometimes it's just them and that's okay. Right. I just, admit that. I mean, I know a lot of people, out in the world on LinkedIn, and sometimes I'll look at their posts and I'm like, that's not what I want to see today. Other people are just pure motivators, right? I mean, so real motivators. Like, I don't know if you know a guy named Brian Schulman. I've had the pleasure of, meeting him and talking with him and working with him, but he's just a motivating guy. Like, if I see that he's posting something, it's usually pretty good. You just want to, you feel good, right? You just want to see it. Or maybe we both know Luke Matthews. Luke, I really want to see his post because he has the sense of humor, along with potentially something valuable in that post. And that's a great mix for me. I want a lot of different things, and I get it from a lot of different, influencers, a lot of different people out there. But sometimes I don't want to name them all, but sometimes I just say, oh no, I can't read that. I'm not going to be happy if I read that.
No, we're not going to name those. But we started from lead generation, and it's I'm always an advocate of selling without selling. So I'd always rather have someone approach me about something rather than me going out and sort of implying buy my stuff. I mean, I don't even have anything to sell at the moment, so it's not really relevant either. But it's very uncomfortable for me to be very direct in terms of asking for business, right? And very often I do realize that if I did, it would work probably, right? But it just feels very uncomfortable. And sometimes the audience kind of just wants that direct, not instruction, but like direct request, so they know exactly what they need to do. Right. Sometimes like even just like leave a comment or click the link or whatever it is. It sounds obvious. It seems obvious to us, but sometimes just need that direct kind of request. How do you balance that? So it's not really, you're not missing too many opportunities because you're too humble versus, you don't go out there all in and become this egocentric person who's trying to close with every single content piece.
I think there are a couple options. One of the options is, it really is having a reputation that you've built up, that it takes a little bit of time. It's not something that happens in 5 minutes, but I do get people who simply reach out and they say, what do you think of this? Is this something you can do, or do you know someone that you would recommend, right? That happens a lot. I mean, all the time. And that's real, right? I mean, that is absolutely real, but you can't do it in 5 minutes. I couldn't just sign up on LinkedIn and expect it. And so that's one thing. The second thing I would say, though, about, leads, I am not a fan anymore of the very direct, like cold message. I'm not a fan of that anymore. And the reason I say that is that I've had great experience in just producing content for clients that does get leads, very direct content. And again, I probably can't name this client, but a very big cybersecurity company, one of the biggest in the world. I had the pleasure of working on some projects with them. And we ended up creating all sorts of lead generation, projects for them. And mostly what was happening was it was very specific communities, again, that we were building up this great content for, video and written and other content. And then those people would read that, get engaged, get excited, and then they would end up somewhere and they would learn more about signing up for these cybersecurity products, right? But it's very genuine, right? It's very genuine. It's like, this is what can help you as an educator. This is what can help you as a grandparent worrying about her grandkids. This is, it's that specific, right? So to me, those are two approaches that work. One is build up that expertise, and it takes a little time as a company or an individual, and then people will be contacting you and you don't have to go crazy worrying about it. And the second thing is, build all of this great content that has value for people in particular communities, and you will get leads that way. That works.
Okay, got it. Building the expertise, we know it takes time. I mean, it's obvious. But what are the steps? Like, how do you build that expertise? Like, what needs to be done in order? Because you may spend that time doing the wrong things, right? And it will still not work. So what you should put your time and effort to in order to build that expertise to get to that stage?
Well, I think that I always tell people, like I mentor people in business school programs and in colleges. And when I talk about this, I say, tell me 2 or 3 things that really you're excited about. And I don't judge, right? It could be anything. Could be, even though they're in business school, it could be, they could say music, they could say art, they could say theater, they could say gardening, it could say anything, right?
Well, artists do need business knowledge as well, I think, more than anyone else. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that is a genuine step, though, that everyone needs to ask themselves or whoever they're talking to about this. It's like, you got to find something that's real, that you're passionate about, and then you start building around that. Like, well, if you're passionate about, what does it mean? It means that you're learning as much as you possibly can, and that you're participating in something, right? So you become an expert in a particular kind of music, because you follow all these folks and you're really into it, and then maybe you get to the point where, people's booking agents, and how, concerts work and how music's recorded. And, you funnel yourself in these areas and you learn and learn. For me, I was in retail at one point. I was a retail exec. I had a printing business that was a tech thing. I was in early e-commerce, starting in the first .com boom in '99. And then since then, lots and lots of e-commerce and digital marketing. But I keep building on this. I could credibly talk about AI and machine learning applications, right, for commerce. I could credibly do that because I try to really keep up on it. And that's what I think people need to do. It's like, if you're passionate about something, don't stop. Keep going. Keep going, and you can build up that expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So I guess on this positive note, encouraging everyone to keep learning, because with this full speed of how fast the technology is moving, I think that you will never have a lack of stuff to learn. Definitely. It's just about choosing what you're really passionate about and what you would like to pick to learn, but there will always be stuff that will be happening, and I guess it's you have to learn in order to keep up, and learn even more in order to sort of succeed and go ahead. And I always encourage people to learn in it's good to be a niche expert, but you shouldn't stay narrow-minded. If you are about AI and if you're about marketing, it's always nicer to also read few fiction books, or to also look into completely different spheres, because the what I have discovered from different spheres, you can have different things that you could bring into the sphere you are at. Like, from my fiction writing experience, I'm bringing loads of storytelling related stuff to marketing. Or, from this podcasting thing, it was enough to have the right foundation and basic knowledge of the things that now is so popular, which are virtual events, right? Setting up virtual event for someone who's been doing this, it's relatively easy and less things to figure out from scratch, and things like that. So it's there's always things from different spheres that you can bring in. And I think mixing it up is where your strengths will appear, because that spectrum of knowledge, it's unique to you. So figuring out how to use those things together maybe is a way to differentiate, probably, in this industry.
I agree.
So yeah, keep learning, keep reading, because I think reading, especially fiction these days, is so underrated. I do understand that there are lots of crappy books out there as well. So choosing and finding the right ones is hard as well. But still, I think that's another way to just detach from the reality and also get some new knowledge as well. Okay, well, it was really a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks a lot. I think we kind of provoked a few thoughts for our listeners and viewers. So I think there is a lot to go on and reflect about. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Subscribe and leave a review if you haven't done so yet. And yeah, we'll meet you in the next episode, and I'll be in touch with you, obviously. So take care.
Thank you so much, Annie. It's been a pleasure.